There's a level of study discipline that makes academic failure impossible. Today, you'll discover how a 17th-century samurai who mastered sword fighting, strategy, painting, calligraphy, and philosophy, all through self-study, developed a system that eliminates study inconsistency completely. Have you ever noticed how some students never break their study routine? They study every single day, same time, same intensity, same focus, while everyone else studies frantically before exams and forgets everything after. Everyone else promises to study regularly and quits by week 2. These students just show up every day. No excuses. No motivation needed. And you know what most people think? They are naturally smart. They love studying. They don't have my distractions. But what if I told you study discipline has nothing to do with intelligence or loving studying? What if the reason you can't maintain consistent study isn't because you're undisciplined, but because you're using the wrong study system? Miyamoto Musashi had no formal education, no teachers, no school. Yet he mastered multiple disciplines through pure self-study. He studied sword technique, military strategy, Zen philosophy, painting, and calligraphy with such discipline that he became legendary in all of them. Before he died, he wrote down the exact system he used to maintain perfect study consistency. He called it Gaku no Maiki, the way of learning. And once you understand how it works, you'll never miss another study session. But there's a catch: this method will require you to abandon every study technique you've ever been taught and start from scratch. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1: The Awakening. The story I'm about to tell you happened to a medical student named Priya. She was 22 years old, in her second year of med school, intelligent enough to get admitted, but completely unable to maintain consistent study. The pattern was always the same. The semester starts. Priya makes a perfect study schedule. Week 1, she follows it perfectly. It feels amazing. Week 2, minor deviations, but she's mostly on track. Week 3, the schedule starts falling apart. Week 4, complete abandonment. Months pass in inconsistent, chaotic study. Then exams approach, and she studies 16 hours a day for a week, barely passes, and promises herself, next semester, I'll study consistently. Next semester, same pattern. Perfect schedule. Week 1, success. Week 2, decline. Week 3, collapse. Panic study before exams. Barely survive. 3 semesters of this cycle, and Priya realized she wasn't learning medicine. She was surviving medicine. The knowledge wouldn't stick because she was cramming instead of studying. She'd pass exams, then forget everything weeks later. The breaking point came during her anatomy practical exam. She crammed the names of 200 muscles in 3 days. During the exam, her mind went blank. She remembered nothing. She failed. That night, sitting in her apartment surrounded by textbooks she'd barely opened all semester, Priya thought, I'm intelligent. I got into med school. Why can't I just study consistently like normal students? She searched for how to study consistently without motivation and found a discussion about samurai learning methods. Someone quoted Miyamoto Musashi. The warrior who studies only when he feels motivated will die in his first battle. The master studies every day regardless of feeling. He establishes discipline that requires no motivation. Priya spent the night reading the Book of 5 Rings, and what she discovered explained everything. She had been waiting for motivation to study. Musashi never waited for anything. He studied whether motivated or not. And he developed a system that made motivation irrelevant. Chapter 2: The Principle of Gaku no Maiki, the Way of Learning. Miyamoto Musashi was born in 1584. He had almost no formal education. His father abandoned him, and he grew up essentially alone, teaching himself everything. But by age 30, he'd mastered sword fighting well enough to never lose a duel. By 40, he'd mastered military strategy well enough to write books about it. By 50, he'd mastered painting well enough that his artwork is still displayed in museums today. How did someone with no teachers, no school, and no formal education master multiple disciplines? Through what he called Gaku no Maiki, the way of learning. Musashi wrote, "Learning is not about feeling ready to learn. Learning is not about being in the right mood. Learning is a daily practice that continues regardless of conditions, feelings, or circumstances. The warrior who needs perfect conditions to study never masters anything." He established a routine in his 20s that he maintained for 40 years. Wake at dawn. 2 hours of sword practice. 1 hour studying strategy texts. 1 hour practicing calligraphy or painting. Repeat daily. No exceptions. Not when he felt motivated. Not when he was inspired. Not when conditions were perfect. Every single day, whether he wanted to or not. Priya read this and realized her fundamental error. She'd been treating study as something she did when she felt like it. Musashi treated study like breathing, non-negotiable, regardless of feeling. A Stanford educational psychologist who has been studying learning consistency for 18 years explains. The primary difference between successful and unsuccessful students isn't intelligence or resources. It's study architecture. Unsuccessful students rely on motivation, which is variable. Successful students rely on structure, which is constant. When study depends on feeling, it's inconsistent. When study depends on structure, it's inevitable. Priya tested this immediately. Instead of, "I'll study when I have motivation," she changed it to, "I study every day at 6 p.m. for 2 hours. Motivation is irrelevant." Day 1, no motivation, she studied anyway for 2 hours. Day 2, tired, she studied anyway for 2 hours. Day 3, friends invited her out, she declined and studied for 2 hours. After 1 week of structure-based studying, she'd studied more consistently than she had in 3 months of motivation-based studying. Because structure doesn't require feeling, it just requires showing up. Chapter 3, The Principle of Katachi, Form over Feeling. 1 week into her structured study, Priya discovered a problem. She was showing up for her study sessions, but the quality was terrible. Her mind wandered. She read the same page 5 times without understanding it. She sat for 2 hours, but accomplished maybe 20 minutes of real learning. She went back to Musashi's writings and found the principle she'd missed, Katachi, form over feeling. The warrior practices perfect form even when his spirit is weak. When your form is correct, your spirit eventually aligns with it. When you wait for your spirit to be correct, you never practice. Musashi practiced sword strikes the exact same way every single time, same stance, same breathing, same movement. Whether he felt focused or distracted, motivated or unmotivated, the form remained perfect. Because Musashi understood that form disciplines the mind. When you maintain perfect form, your wandering mind eventually submits to the structure. Priya realized she'd been studying with no form. She would sit down, open a book, and hope her mind would cooperate. Sometimes it did, usually it didn't. Her sessions had structure, same time, same duration, but no form. So she created a study form based on Musashi's principle. The study form. Sit at your desk. Back straight, feet flat on the floor. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. State the specific learning goal out loud. I will master, specific topic. Open the textbook to the marked page. Read 1 paragraph. Close the book. Recite what you read from memory. Open the book and verify accuracy. Repeat for the entire session. This form was rigid, mechanical, almost ritualistic. But that was the point. The form demanded presence. You couldn't follow the form while distracted. The form forced focus. First session using the form, Priya's mind tried to wander, but the form kept pulling her back. Close the book. Recite from memory. You can't recite if you weren't paying attention. The mind is forced to focus. After 3 days, the form had disciplined her mind. She'd sit down, follow the form, and focus would emerge naturally, not because she felt focused, but because the form created focus. A Harvard researcher who has been studying learning methods for 20 years found structured learning protocols increase information retention by 60 to 80% compared to unstructured reading. The structure creates forced engagement. Students can't passively consume, they must actively process to complete the form. This forced processing creates deeper encoding. But Priya discovered the form alone wasn't enough. There was a third component. Snorts, Chapter 4, The Principle of Shuchu, Singular Focus. 2 weeks into structured, form-based study, Priya was studying more consistently than ever. But she noticed a problem. She was studying anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, pathology, and biochemistry all in the same day. 2 hours divided between 5 subjects meant 24 minutes per subject, not enough to go deep. She found Musashi's teaching on Shuchu, singular focus. The warrior who studies 10 techniques learns none. The warrior who studies one technique for 10,000 hours masters it. Divide your practice and you master nothing. Concentrate your practice and you master everything. Musashi didn't study sword technique, strategy, art, and philosophy simultaneously. He'd spend years focused solely on the sword. Once mastered, he'd spend years solely on strategy. Once mastered, years solely on art, sequential mastery, not simultaneous mediocrity. Priya realized her study was scattered. Every day she touched 5 subjects, but mastered none. Her mind would switch between anatomy and physiology before either could be deeply encoded. So she adopted Musashi's principle: one subject, complete concentration until mastery, then the next subject. Her exam schedule showed: anatomy exam in 6 weeks, physiology exam in 8 weeks, pharmacology in 10 weeks. Instead of studying all 3 simultaneously, she studied only anatomy for 6 weeks. Every day, 2 hours, complete concentration on anatomy alone. Her classmates thought she was insane. You're not studying physiology at all. You'll forget everything. But Priya held the principle: concentrated practice creates mastery. Scattered practice creates confusion. Week 1, 2 hours daily on the skeletal system only. Week 2, 2 hours daily on the muscular system only. Week 3, 2 hours daily on the nervous system only. Each week, complete concentration on one system. No jumping around, deep, sustained focus until mastery. The anatomy exam came. Priya scored the highest in her class. Not because she studied more hours, but because she studied with concentrated focus instead of scattered attention. Then she shifted. 2 weeks before the physiology exam, 2 hours daily on physiology alone, complete concentration. The pattern repeated. A Yale neuroscientist who has been studying memory and learning for 17 years explains that interleaving subjects is beneficial for certain types of learning. But for foundational knowledge acquisition, sustained concentrated study significantly outperforms distributed study. The brain needs sustained exposure to create strong neural pathways. Subject switching before pathways are established creates weak, easily forgotten associations. But Priya discovered one more critical element. Chapter 5, The Principle of Renshu, Deliberate Repetition. For weeks into her concentrated anatomy study, Priya faced a frustrating reality. She'd read about the brachial plexus 5 times, but when tested, she couldn't recall it. Reading wasn't enough. She found Musashi's principle of Renshu, deliberate repetition. Reading about the sword technique is not practice. Swinging the sword once is not practice. Swinging the sword 1,000 times, until the movement becomes part of your body, that is practice. Study without repetition is entertainment, not learning. Musashi didn't read about sword techniques and consider himself trained. He would practice a single strike 1,000 times a day for months until the strike became automatic, perfect, unthinking. Priya realized her mistake. She'd been reading medical information and calling it studying. But reading is passive consumption. Clears throat, learning requires active repetition. She changed her study form, revised it. Read one concept until understood. Close the book. Write out the concept from memory. Check accuracy. Mark errors. Wait 5 minutes. Do nothing. Write it out again from memory. Check accuracy again. Wait 1 hour. Write it out again from memory. Repeat until there are 0 errors. This was exhausting. One concept would take 45 minutes to truly encode through repetition. But that one concept would be permanently learned. Previously, Priya would study 30 concepts in 2 hours but remember maybe 5. Now, she'd study 3 concepts in 2 hours and remember all 3 permanently. Quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. Mastery over coverage. The brachial plexus that she couldn't recall after reading it 5 times, after writing it from memory 10 times, it was permanently encoded. She could recall it perfectly weeks later without reviewing. Musashi wrote, "One technique practiced 10,000 times is more valuable than 10,000 techniques practiced once." Priya applied this ruthlessly. Every anatomy structure, read, understand, write from memory, repeat until permanent. No moving on until mastery. Her study sessions became slower but infinitely more effective, less content covered per session, but 100% retention of everything covered. An MIT cognitive scientist who has been studying memory formation for 16 years found retrieval practice, recalling information from memory, is 300% more effective than rereading for long-term retention. Each retrieval attempt strengthens the memory trace. Multiple spaced retrievals create nearly permanent encoding. Reading creates weak memories. Repetitive retrieval creates permanent knowledge. But there was one final principle that completed the system. Chapter 6, The Principle of Mokoroku, the Catalogue of Mastery. 6 weeks into her new study system, Priya had transformed her learning. But she noticed something troubling. She'd mastered anatomy concepts weeks ago, but wasn't reviewing them. She worried they'd fade. She found Musashi's final learning principle, Mokoroku, the Catalogue of Mastery. The warrior maintains a catalogue of everything he has mastered. He reviews this catalogue regularly, not to relearn, but to maintain sharpness. What is not maintained degrades. Throughout his life, Musashi kept detailed records, Mokoroku, of techniques mastered, strategies learned, and insights gained. He reviewed this catalogue systematically, not with long reviews, but with brief refreshers to maintain the edge. A master swordsman doesn't abandon techniques he mastered years ago. He maintains them through periodic practice. Similarly, a master student doesn't abandon concepts mastered weeks ago. They maintain them through spaced review. Priya created her Mokoroku system. Day 1, study new material, concentrated, form-based, repetitive. Day 2, review day 1 material once, 5 minutes. Day 7, review week 1 material, 10 minutes. Day 30, review month 1 material, 15 minutes. Each mastered concept went into her catalogue with a review schedule. New learning took 80% of study time. Catalogue maintenance took 20%. This prevented the forgetting curve. Previously, Priya would master something, never review it, and forget it by exam time. Now, mastered material stayed mastered through strategic catalogue maintenance. Her anatomy knowledge from week 1 was still perfect in week 6 because she reviewed it on day 2, day 7, and day 30, minimal time investment, maximum retention. Musashi maintained his sword technique mastery through daily practice. Even in his 60s, he wasn't learning new techniques, he was maintaining the catalogue of techniques already mastered. Priya adopted this completely. Once something was mastered, it entered the catalogue. The catalogue was reviewed according to the schedule. Nothing was ever truly finished, just maintained at mastery level. A Princeton researcher who has studied long-term retention for 19 years explains the forgetting curve shows that without review, 70% of learned information is lost within 48 hours. Strategic spaced repetition prevents this decay. Reviews at day 1, day 7, and day 30 create near-permanent retention with minimal time investment. The catalogue system is how experts maintain vast knowledge bases. Chapter 7, The Complete Transformation. For months after discovering Musashi's learning system, Priya was unrecognizable as a student. She'd gone from inconsistent, panic-driven studying to disciplined, systematic mastery. Her routine was unbreakable. 6 p.m., daily study session starts. Follow the form exactly, structured, active, repetitive focus on one subject completely until mastery. Add mastered concepts to the catalogue. Review the catalog according to schedule. 8 p.m. Study session ends. No motivation required. No inspiration needed. No perfect conditions necessary, just structure, form, focus, repetition, and maintenance. Her exam scores transformed. Semester 1, barely passing, inconsistent cramming. Semester 2, barely passing, same pattern. Semester 3, barely passing, same pattern. Semester 4, top 10% of class, Musashi system. Semester 5, top 5% of class, system mastery. But more importantly, she was actually learning medicine, not memorizing for exams and forgetting, but encoding knowledge permanently. She could recall anatomy from 3 months ago perfectly because it was in her catalog and properly maintained. Her classmates asked, "How do you study so consistently? How do you remember everything?" Priya's answer, "I follow Musashi's way of learning, the 5 principles working together. First, gakunomi. Study as daily practice, not mood-based activity, structure over motivation, consistency over inspiration. Second, katachi. Study with perfect form, rigid structure that disciplines a wandering mind. Form creates focus. Third, shu, one subject at a time, complete concentration until mastery. No scattered attention. Fourth, renshu, deliberate repetition until permanent. Read, close the book, retrieve from memory, repeat. Quality over quantity. Fifth, mokoroku, catalog everything mastered. Review strategically. Maintain mastery through spaced repetition. Her study partner, who had watched her transformation, asked, "You study fewer hours than you used to. How are you learning more?" Priya's answer was simple, "I used to study many hours ineffectively. Now I study fewer hours with perfect structure, form, focus, repetition, and maintenance. Effectiveness matters more than hours." Chapter 8, The Truth About Study Discipline. Here's what Priya learned that most students never understand: study discipline isn't about willpower. It's about system design. Students who study inconsistently aren't undisciplined. They are using undisciplined systems. They rely on motivation, which varies. They study without form, which allows distraction. They scatter attention across subjects, which prevents mastery. They read without repetition, which creates forgetting. They never review, which guarantees loss. Their system is designed to fail, so they fail, and then they blame themselves for a lack of discipline. Students who study consistently aren't more disciplined. They have better systems, systems that don't require motivation, systems that force focus, systems that create mastery, and systems that maintain knowledge. Miyamoto Musashi studied consistently for 40 years not because he had superhuman discipline, but because he had a system that made consistency inevitable. Priya had spent 3 semesters blaming herself for a lack of discipline. But she wasn't undisciplined, her system was. Once she adopted Musashi's discipline system, her studying became automatically disciplined. This is the truth: you're not undisciplined. Your study system is undisciplined. Change the system, and discipline emerges naturally. Priya started recommending Musashi's system to struggling classmates. Most didn't try it. It's too rigid. It's too slow. I need to cover more material, faster. Those students continued failing because they prioritized speed over mastery, coverage over retention, and flexibility over structure. The few who adopted the system transformed completely. One classmate went from the bottom 30% to the top 20% in 1 semester, not because he studied more hours, but because he studied with structure, form, focus, repetition, and maintenance. A Columbia University researcher who studied academic success for 21 years found that weekly study time correlates with academic performance, R equals 0.23. Study system quality correlates much more strongly with academic performance, R equals 0.71. Students who adopt structured, active, focused study systems dramatically outperform peers who study double the hours with unstructured methods. Effectiveness beats volume every time. Chapter 9, The Path Forward. Here's exactly how to use Musashi's system for consistent study discipline. Week 1, Establish Gaku, the way. Choose your study time, same time every day. Example, 6 to 8 p.m. non-negotiable. No exceptions. No, I'll skip today. Start with just 1 hour if 2 feels overwhelming. Show up every single day regardless of motivation. Track it. Mark an X on your calendar each study day. Goal, build a consistency habit. Weeks 2 to 3, implement Katachi, form. Create your study form, a structured protocol you follow every session without deviation. Example.
Take 3 deep breaths. State the learning goal. Read 1 paragraph. Close the book. Recite from memory. Verify accuracy. Repeat. Follow the form exactly every time. The form disciplines your mind. Goal. Train focus through structure. Weeks 4 to 5. Apply Shuchu, singular focus. Identify your most urgent exam topic. Study only that topic for the entire study period. No jumping between subjects. Complete concentration on one thing until it's mastered, then move to the next. Goal. Deep mastery instead of shallow coverage. Week 6 to 8. Practice Renshu, deliberate repetition. Shift from passive reading to active retrieval. Protocol. Read and understand. Close the book. Write from memory. Check accuracy. Wait, then repeat. Don't move to the next concept until the current one is perfect. Fewer concepts. Perfect retention. Goal. Permanent encoding through repetition. Week 9. Build Mokoroku, catalog maintenance. Create a review schedule for mastered material. 1 day after learning, 5-minute review. 1 week after, 10-minute review. 1 month after, 15-minute review. Use about 20% of study time to maintain your catalog. Prevent forgetting. Maintain mastery. After 8 to 12 weeks of this system, studying becomes automatic, not because you've built motivation, but because you've built structure that doesn't require motivation. A Harvard researcher who studied learning systems for 19 years conducted comparison research. Students using structured, active, focused learning protocols showed 85% retention at a 6-month follow-up versus 15% for conventional studying. More importantly, structured students maintained consistency rates above 90% versus about 30% for unstructured students. The system creates both better learning and sustainable discipline. Miyamoto Musashi had no teachers, no formal education, and no school. Yet he mastered sword fighting, military strategy, Zen philosophy, painting, and calligraphy through pure self-study maintained over 40 years. His final words were, "I regret nothing." A life of perfect learning discipline, not from superhuman willpower, but from systematic study architecture that's available to you. Not the samurai life. Not the death duels. But the study discipline, the consistent learning, the systematic mastery that makes academic success inevitable. Every time you failed to study consistently, it wasn't because you were undisciplined. It was because your system was undisciplined. Musashi's system is different. Structure replaces motivation. Form creates focus. Concentration enables mastery. Repetition ensures retention. Maintenance prevents forgetting. You don't need more motivation. You need better structure. And Musashi's structure creates study discipline automatically. You're ready to stop inconsistent cramming and start systematic mastery. Establish your study time. Create your form. Focus on one subject. Repeat until permanent. Maintain what you've mastered. The transformation begins now.